Hey y'all, welcome to my channel, Loc'D, and I never thought that I would be filming this video, but it's just really heavy on my mind, and I thought that we should start having conversations of what triggers are, because I feel like in the book community, a lot of times we talk about what's a trigger, how it feels, but no one is actually talking about how they can be manifested, right? So I want to start off and use a piece of literature to expand upon that. And I'm sorry if it's like a little jittery because I'm holding the phone as I'm talking about this. Recently, I read and is continuing to read False Witness by Karen Slaughter. And if anyone is familiar with her work, Karen Slaughter really holds back no punches. Oftentimes, when you are reading her novels, it starts off with an incident of violence. And it's never like a low level violence, and I'm saying low level as in like something that's violent but not like will shake you to your core in a sense, and not dismissing anyone's experience of violence, but the way I view it from my experiences, apart from my experiences as a therapist, her examples of violence are very triggering. So when I say triggering, I want to take a little time to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a disorder that someone could get based on how they experience a stress or trauma. And one of the symptoms in PTSD is flashbacks. So as you're reading this book, there is a scene where the two sisters have to go back into a home where the violence took place. And one of the sisters got so caught up in her body that she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything, she couldn't comprehend what was going on. She actually felt like she was to the time where she was being sexually assaulted by a neighbor guy. Now, I want to talk about a couple things about this book that I think would help a lot of people in the bookish community, and people outside of it understand levels of having been sexually abused. So one of the things is there is this controversy, I would say, on how do you classify a person who has been sexually assaulted, raped, beat up, experience intimate partner violence, all the different types of physical violence, right? Because there's this thing of like, what hurts most, like physical or mental violence. But you know, I don't think it's ever healthy to play the pain Olympics, so we're not going to do that here in this video. But in the instance of physical violence, there are people who want to say that I'm a victim of sexual assault, I'm a victim of rape. There are people who want to say I am a survivor of sexual assault. I think that language is purely up to the person and where they're at in their healing journey. A lot of people think, no, if you claim that you are a victim, then you are stuck in victimhood and then you're not able to get out of it. Rushing to claim victimhood on another person is forcing them to get over a traumatic situation, and I think that the time that it takes for people to heal is situational and based on that person, the trauma they have experienced prior, and the impact on the incident or the stressor. I wanted to bring this conversation to book 2 specifically because in the text you see the triggers, you see what they are, but they're not explicitly said. So when we think about stress, it's very important that we think about our amygdala, which is the part of our brain that really has these snapshots of events and just taking snapshots on the things that happen in our lives. So if any of those things that happen or those snapshots that happen is seen as a stressor or a traumatic event, anything that is closely related or reminds us or reminds our amygdala, like, oh, this is a situation where, it reminds me of X, and when it was that first situation that was dangerous, so we have to protect you. That protection, a lot of you know it as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And it really happens specifically when people are triggered. So let's say you were raped and it happened in a park. Your amygdala took a snapshot of that park. So anytime you're in a park, you might feel your heart racing, you might feel some numbness, you may feel shortness of breath. It may feel like a panic attack. It might be a panic attack. And even though you're not in actual danger, your body is responding to that external stimuli. Your body is keeping that score, right? So when we were talking about experiencing triggers, I'm wondering if you, the watcher, the person who consumes bookish content or not, if you understood what it meant when someone says, I'm triggered. When someone says, this person triggered me or this thing triggered me. I think it's important that we talk about what a trigger feels like, because I've seen sometimes on the bookish community triggers that as a mental health professional I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as a trigger, and I'm not here to go into those things because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm invalidating their experiences. In no way am I doing that, and it could be a growing process. Maybe I'm seeing things that I don't quite understand, or maybe there is more growth that needs to happen. There's multiple different ways of why I may not agree or understand something. But while reading False Witness, I was actually triggered by reading it. There were some scenes in it that, definitely sparked my fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. I froze multiple times, had to take a break from reading because it was too much. I started having flashbacks, and I myself, and I have never said this on the internet, but I have post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was diagnosed with that a very, very long time ago. So for me, my triggers will look different than someone else's triggers, right? Some people fight through the response, fight through the trigger. Some people freeze through the trigger. Some people people please through the trigger. Some people, there's so many different ways in which I've seen triggers being manifest that it's a literal effect on the body. And there's just been some discrepancies in the ways in which triggers are discussed in the booktube community. And again, this is not time for me to point out who made these discrepancies, what it is. It's just a trend that I've seen, and I just wanted to bring it to our attention of like, what do you think that could be? And have you thought about what triggers are? Have you identified in your life like places or things or sounds or smells that can be triggering for you, that can give you those responses that I've spoken about? And I thought, talking about False Witness would be a good introductory on talking about triggers, what they are, and how they can feel. Because let me tell you, the triggers that I feel are very, how do I describe it? It feels paralyzing. And I also think it's very important that authors start to put trigger warnings and content warnings, really, in their books, because you can start something and then bam, you're triggered. Like, I think letting someone know about the content of your book is very responsible, mainly because you just never know how someone will perceive your literature. You just will never know. And you never know what or how their triggers may manifest. So trigger warnings in books and content warnings in books is very, very vital to the reader, because let me tell you, there are times I personally know a distinct difference from how I feel about a book that has content warnings, and then I go into it knowing that there is a possibility that I can be triggered and I'm preparing myself, right? Versus if I go into a book and I'm not knowing that there's going to be trigger warnings at all. And I won't continue to go on and blab all day about this, but there was just some things that I think about, and I wanted to bring it to your attention if it hasn't already been brought to your attention, and just have that discussion about it. And in no way am I your therapist right now. In no way what I'm saying right now a reflection of any place that I've worked or any place that I'm currently worked or any work that I'm doing. This is just my opinion of how I'm watching trends happen in the book community when it comes to mental health, and when it comes to the word trigger, and when it comes to the word or the words content warning. I do think they are important. I 100% think they are important. But I'm wondering if there needs to be education on what they are and how many people are experiencing them. And how I experience them, I know is different the way other people have experienced it. My PTSD looks totally different than other people's PTSD. And I know that, and I understand that. I also want to point out that as a Black woman, my culture is different than other non-Black people. I say that to say that even amongst the Black diaspora, the African diaspora, there are differences within cultures and between cultures. And what I may view as a trigger might be just normal adjustment issues to another culture. And normal is whatever that society or cultural system sets that up to be. And I also want to point out that you can experience these flashbacks, these panic attacks, anxiety, all different type of things that are symptomatic of PTSD when you have stressor on top of stressor on top of stressor. So they might be like little stressors to you, but they can add up and causes you to have a more severe reaction, which is why people tell you to prioritize your mental health and your self-care. So I just wanted to say that as well. There is something that I would like the book to community to consider, and it is to consider saying content warning versus trigger warnings. In some cases, saying the word trigger can actually put somebody in their body without their permission. And I have used trigger and a content warning interchangeably throughout this video, but I want to make it clear that when I say trigger warnings are important in literature, as I'm talking right now about, the book community, I want to retract that statement and say content warnings is what I think is needed, because I think there was a different feel from saying these are content warnings versus saying these are triggers, because sometimes I feel that it is a different experience for me. Can this be me putting my own biases on literature? Yes, but I am not the only person I know who feels that way. So I feel that saying content warning may be better than saying trigger warnings for things. Just something to consider. Thank you for watching this video as I talked about this important issue. And if you have any thoughts, please put them in the comment section below, and have a wonderful day.